And here we are, my two guests today, John Thompson, Prashant Natarajan. So I can't believe we're doing this because it's like when someone booked the Beatles back in the 60s, right? You book them, you pay the deposit, fine. But then they call you up and they go, I'm really sorry. We're playing stadiums now. We're playing Wembley Stadium, so we can't come to your school hall anymore. But But nevertheless, I've managed to persuade these two great AI data analytics strategists and authors to come and spend a bit of time on LinkedIn Live today. John, Prashant, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Always happy to be with you.
That's very, very kind. I know you've been busy on the road show, so let me just start out and put a couple of shout outs for the work you've been doing. John, your book, Building Analytics Teams, Harnessing Analytics and AI for Business Improvement, is barnstorming, isn't it? 35 five-star reviews on Amazon and growing every day. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I looked just before the event that we're doing here today, and it remains in the top 0.5% of all sales on Amazon. So I'm blown away. I'm pleasantly surprised.
Oh, well deserved. And I've got my copy en route as well, which I'm looking forward to getting into. I've got a e-copy. I want a physical copy as well. That's the one that's been posted out. Prashant, so your book, 2017, Demystifying Big Data and Machine Learning for Healthcare, which I'm sure you want to mention, but you've got your new book as well that's not too far away from press, right?
Yeah, it's not too far away. Thank you, Richard. And if that can reach the levels where John's book is at, I'll die a happy man. But the last book, Demystifying Big Data and Machine Learning, is definitely the bestseller in its genre in terms of bringing domain-specific big data analytics and AI ML to life. The next book is called Demystifying AI for the Enterprise. And what we are talking about over there is it's not a book, no offense meant to the data scientists on the call, but it's not necessarily a book exclusively for data scientists and analytics professionals. They are an important audience. It's primarily for executives, and it's for managers and people in the business and product teams and non-technical roles on how do you take advantage, how do you identify use cases, how do you bring analytics and AI to life. I'm doing that with a few legends in the space: Kirk Bone, Lee Wilkinson, Shanta Mohan, Bob Rogers, Jonas Christensen, and Ed Dixon. So it's a labor of love, as John knows any book is. So really looking forward to that coming out soon. Thank you.
Amazing job by you both. But is it mission impossible trying to take these layer of complexities in business and find the language and the context and the simplification of those so they can be more widely understood? John, how do you approach that to try and communicate this subject matter?
That's a great question, Richard, as always, coming from you. So Prashant knows when you're writing a book, it's you're trying to get the message out there as broad as possible and to many people around the world who have many different languages, many different lenses. So you're writing at a level of abstraction so everybody can understand that. When you're operating in an enterprise like Prashant and I are in our day jobs, and you're sitting across the table from a senior executive, a C-level executive, senior manager, senior vice president, I always try to change my language to talk in their vernacular. So if I'm talking to someone who's running manufacturing, I'm talking about manufacturing line efficiency. If I'm talking about a supply chain, I'm talking about order fulfillment and delivery times and things of that nature. If I'm talking to someone about the efficiency of extracting proteins from human plasma, I'm talking about titers and liters and process efficiency. So analytics is somewhere where you as a professional needs to be a chameleon and need to talk in people's language so they can understand exactly what you're trying to help them with.
But it's still a tough job, isn't it, Prashant? If you ask any leader, what do you want for your analytics? What do you want to achieve? They're not going to find it easy to speak in the right language, to articulate. I mean, what are they going to say? I want to be data-driven. I want to lead with insights. Just meaningless, right? How would you bridge that?
So I would say that those are motherhood statements. And I think it's our job as professionals, and especially professionals who bridge both the technology side of things and business side of things. Like John, I come from a business and a product background myself over the last 20 plus years, uh, working with technology. But and I think it's able to take a statement that is, we want to be smarter, we want to be quicker, we want competitive advantage on one hand, mapping that to the real capabilities of what data analytics and AI provides today, and then coming up with that intersection of what is doable, how it should be staggered, and what success means. Merely hiring an analytics team or a data science team and letting them to their own devices is a recipe for failure. Talking about strategy without being able to understand what technology can and cannot do is not a recipe for success either. So I think John mentioned that the analytics professional, especially an analytics executive, has to be a person who wears multiple hats. And I think that's a great metaphor. The other one quick last comment I would make on this is, we always hear the term the democratization of technology or the democratization of AI, but not very many people define what democratization means. Having access to technology is one thing, bridging the digital divide is one thing. But to me, democratization truly will happen only when people understand what analytics can do, what it cannot do, and how they can apply it in their business process and operational processes.
Prashant, thank
It's,
John.
it's, that is absolutely true. One of the things to extend what Prashant was saying there and support it is that we and the teams that I've been leading for decades now, our approach has really moved away and has not been to go ask anybody what they want analytics to do, and we've done that for years. So what we generally do is we'll build proof of concepts, or we'll build small systems, and we'll take it to them and we'll show it, with their data on the screen, and saying, we think we can predict the on time in full percentage across all these different suppliers. Is that something that's interesting to you? And they sit back and go, you're kidding. You can do that? We're like, yes, we can. And we have. And when you do it that way, then what you've done is you've planted a seed and you've put a little, water on it. And then 2 weeks later, a week later, 6 minutes later, whatever it is, however fast their cycle works, they'll call you up and go, oh, I got 7 more ideas that I want you to work on.
Nice. So you've really bridged the conversation by that point, haven't you? You've invited them in and not asked them to reskill and change perspectives overnight, suddenly to take advantage of this. Before we go further deeper into this, what is the state of AI in enterprise? I mean, it's such an open question. What do we mean by AI when we say that? Do we mean they're trying out different data science projects? Do we mean they're using advanced analytics, or do we mean there's something, brilliant, that revolutionary that's being done by organizations? I've got some stats that I can pull out in a moment. But Prashant, what is the state of AI in enterprise? Is everybody doing it and having some success, or is it still really challenging?
I think it's a mix of both. And I would like to maybe start by saying that it depends on what type of an organization you are. So if you are a Silicon Valley organization, a technology organization where digital is baked into your product offering, or you are selling digital, frankly, and that's what you're doing, then you tend to be an analytics AI first organization by definition, because you don't have an option to be otherwise. On the other hand, if you come to a more traditional industry, which is not, when I say Silicon Valley, I just don't mean Silicon Valley. If you're a technology company, irrespective of where you are, analytics and AI is the core of your competence. On the other hand, if you're a retail company or you're a healthcare company, you're selling widgets, you're selling products, or you are treating patients, or you're conducting clinical trials. And it is not fair to expect them to be completely at the same level compared to one of the Silicon Valley giants or one of the giants elsewhere in Europe or China or India or wherever else it is. So I think that is the first distinction I would make. Is what is in your DNA and what is your core competence. Having said that, the organizations that are tending to do better with AI today are ones that at this time, and based on some of the work research I have also done, I would be very interested in seeing the statistics, is the ones that are technology first organizations are doing better simply because they have moved first. But the opportunity truly exists, which is also what our next book is about, is getting those other organizations to include it as part in order to drive their core competence, not to replace their core competence, but to drive their core competence. You asked a question about where are organizations today. I think I would be, again, going back, I would say the vast majority of organizations are not yet at a place where they are able to deploy this at scale across the whole enterprise to achieve lasting business transformation. That is what I think the current state of affairs is. John?
I think that's true. I think those are fair remarks, and I agree with your assessment, Prashant. I have read a few reports from McKinsey over the last 3-4 months that say that the leaders, the people who are really adopting artificial intelligence, are showing true business improvement, true efficiency and effectiveness in their operations, and improving ROI, improving efficiency, improving profitability, those kind of things. And then, the middle part of the market, the early adopters, late adopters, those people are trying to get into it. They may have one or two functions that they've put some AI capabilities into, some in personalization, some in recommendations, those kind of things. Those are very widespread at this point. And then the people that are really struggling with it are having such a hard time understanding it, they're actually refuting it. They're saying that it doesn't really exist. AI is a chimera. It doesn't, that it's not really happening. Sad that we have people having that kind of dialogue and commentary today. So what we see in the marketplace is the leaders who are investing in AI are moving further and further away from the middle market and the laggards. So it's going to be harder and harder for the middle market, early adopters, late adopters, mainstream market, and the laggards to catch up, because the talent is being acquired by these leading edge firms, and they're getting further and further away from them. So it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy for some firms.
You're coming out of Stanford, you could work for Ford or you could work for Tesla. John, I mean, every gap just seems to be widening. I mean, I said we'd reference automotive just from a kind of outside perspective in on this conversation, but every day Tesla's adding more cars. They're not adding more cars, are they? They're adding more cameras. They're adding more AI to the roads every single day. They're adding to their data every single day. Is it exponential? Not really, but does the gap grow? Absolutely. How are these companies ever going to catch up, John? I mean, Ford's got to start putting cameras on every car now at a loss, haven't they? They're not going to do that. So what happens next to a Ford or a Volkswagen?
Well, it's as you said, the gap does widen. There's no doubt about it. It gets wider and wider. And as we've been reading about that, it's not just about Ford or Volkswagen or GM. It's about the entire ecosystem. I think it's Dubai that's putting in new roads, and every part of the road has sensors in the tarmac and in the guardrails and in the lights and in the traffic control signal. So if you have a car like Tesla and you're starting to do car-to-car communication, and then you do car-to-environmental communication, Ford and the GM and others just keep falling further behind. So I think what they have to do to even start to shorten or keep the gap stasis, or maybe even shorten it, is they have to come up with new incubators or innovation engines. They can't just expect the main core of the business to catch up. It just won't happen. And I know they're doing that. I'm not saying that GM and Ford are not into innovation. They certainly are. But I think they're going to have to do more if they want to, catch up to people like Tesla.
And if I may just add to that, I think both of you hit upon key points. In the end, paradoxical as it might sound, AI is a human game and it's driven by talent.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So there is no fantastic machine, whether it is the benevolent robot or the Terminator kind, that's going to change an organization. The war for talent will continue, but it's not just acquiring talent, it is then enabling that talent in helping them succeed. And I think it may sound a bit self-serving here, but I don't think it's too far. I don't think, Richard, you or John or I see ourselves purely as data and analytics geeks, even if we are. We see ourselves as bridges, we see ourselves as translators, we see ourselves as that important mix of business, product, and technology. And that role, I think, is going to be the toughest to fill role for the companies that want to make the leap.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. I had someone ask me earlier this week on a different event that I was part of. Do you fear that auto ML and these new productivity tools in machine learning are going to do away with data scientists and machine learning engineers? And I smiled and said, no. Those things are just they're base enablers. They're not going to go in and build the best model you can possibly have. We all three of us have talked about this together and as a group that machine learning and AI projects are basically at their core are math and data projects. Until you add in the subject matter expert, you really don't have much. You can do some basic things that help you understand efficiency and effectiveness, but until you understand the nuances of the business process you're trying to affect, and you bring in a subject matter expert to be with the data scientist, you really don't have a competitive advantage. So as you said, Prashant, it's a human game. There is no way AI, machine learning, advanced analytics, prediction, simulation, optimization, no way that stuff takes over the world. It just does not happen. People become more and more important, as a matter of fact.
Prashant, let's talk about the role of leadership. Our topic today, of course, is winning with data in the enterprise. So much of this, I imagine, and you'll tell me, has got to be around culture and leadership, because we know there's no shortage on innovation, right? We know there's no shortage on ideas and creativity, whether you're innovating, co-innovating, open innovating. But it's breaking the mold, isn't it? Why is Tesla so successful? Well, one reason is that they've got no customers to annoy, have they? Why does a Cybertruck look like it does? Don't know, honestly. But he's not going to annoy any customers, is he? And if it doesn't work, he'll make a more regular-looking truck, I'm sure. It's a cost to it. But other companies have got this weight, haven't they? This noose, if you forgive the expression, around their necks of all these customers that they just can't let go, the sunk cost. And leadership's got to soar above that and find a way through that, right?
Absolutely right. And I think we already spoke about the talent, and John has a book that I would again recommend to people, focusing on how do you build analytics team. So we won't touch upon that. I won't touch upon it. There are other things over here. And Richard, you know that I like to focus on culture. Individual career development being part of individual culture, but also organizational culture. And to me, the biggest success factor or impediment can be the existing culture, and the way to address that is changing that culture. And what does it mean to change a culture? It means, on one hand, leadership accepts the possibilities on one hand of what data analytics and AI can do, are also able to make a judgment based on the information they get about what it cannot do, just given the sheer amount of AI washing that is there in industry today. So that's a very important thing, because if you're not able to make the difference between what is real and what is frankly a pipe dream and unreal, then you're going to set yourself up for either inflated opinions of what can happen or disappointment that's going to come. I think that's the first point. The second point is then building these kind of cross-functional teams we talked about, where I think John hit upon it beautifully. Analytics, AI, data, will always remain mathematical, statistical, probabilistic, computational efforts unless you bring stakeholders into it. And that also involves being able to say that this is the way we have done it, and we want to look at new ways, and we want to give it a chance to fail. And the ability to accept failure and the ability to create an organizational culture. Of course, none of us want to fail, but there will be failures. And if you're not able to accept that, and if we punish people for trying, then people will stop trying. People do what they are rewarded to do. The third and final thing, there are other topics, but the third and final thing that I'll focus on is making then analytics driven decisions and AI driven decisions a part of the normal decision making process and not exceptional ones, which means that you bring these analytics and AI people into the conversations on business transformation and digital transformation, make them a part of it, have them involved in it from day one. And if they're going to give you results that you don't like, have that conversation and see what can be done with it. Does that make sense?
It
All
absolutely
3
does.
points make sense. Absolutely. I'll just pick on a couple there. That one of the things that I try to do with my analytics team is I firewall them off from much of the IT department and many other parts of the organization that are focused on making sure that we succeed 100% of the time. I don't mean to pick on the IT department, but that was just the one at the top of my mind. But my analytics organization is a creatively driven organization, and we don't succeed 100% of the time. We try things that are out there. We try things that are sometimes thought crazy. And sometimes we hit things that change the organization dramatically because we do that, but we don't succeed 100% of the time. And every time someone does a project and it fails, we all celebrate it. We're like, okay, what did we learn? Okay, we learned that we can't integrate the data that way. We learned that the production processes won't accept that level of change. We learned that we can't integrate, this kind of boosted tree into this kind of execution system. It just doesn't work. And we're happy to fail that way. We celebrate it. We embrace it. So being willing to fail is a part of the cultural landscape of an organization that you really need to address. So I think those things are crucial. If you have an organization that punishes everyone for every time they make a mistake, you will probably not be very analytically driven in the future.
And if I may just add one more thing to that, Richard and John, and this is, I think, a bit of a soapbox moment. So I hope the readers bear with me on this one. I think the conversations around data analytics and AI are, as they should be in some cases, focused a lot on automation, because that's where people see immediate results. Are we able to get X to do something, and are we able to automate a process? That, I think, is just scratching the surface of what analytics and AI can do. In my opinion, the true value, and going back, Richard, to your comment about how do organizations move up the maturity curve and the value curve and the innovation curve, that cannot happen just with automation. It has to include amplification and it has to include augmentation. Going back to our comment about humans and intelligent machines working together, amplification is basically supplementing human intelligence through pattern discovery that the human eye can't see, through insights that are not always visible to us, to address the biases that sometimes we have, fatigue, all the things that make us human. Augmentation is about complementing things, which is 1 + 1 is equal to 10. And for an organization to truly transform and move up this value curve, all the 3 A's must be a part of the mix. An organization that focuses just on automation because you get immediate ROI without thinking about amplification and augmentation is not taking the greatest advantage of what these capabilities bring to the table.
It's absolutely true. We had a conversation a couple of years ago about robotic process automation, and it's a great technology, does some really interesting things. But for the most part, it's basically paving over the Roman footpaths that you have in the organization and getting things to go faster, but doing it for pretty much the same way. I had some people come to me and say, hey, you've got the advanced analytics team and AI team. We're going to we're going to give you robotic process automation as well. And I said, no. And they said, what do you mean? It's a bigger area. You'll have more people. It'll be something that'll, grow your area. And I said, it's not what I want to focus on. You can get, people in the organization, in finance and in logistics and all these other areas to automate their own processes. These tools have gotten to a point where they're self-service, and you should have those people close to those processes doing the automation. And by the way, if you give any of my data scientists an RPA project, they'll resign and go somewhere where they're going to do work that they consider to be interesting and fun. And that last comment really shocked people. They're like, what do you mean? Isn't RPA, earth-shatteringly innovative and fun? And it's like, no, it's not. It's not interesting at all for a data scientist, but it is interesting for other people. So give it to the people who want to do it.
It's a worthwhile discipline, but it's probably more akin to workflows and APIs than anything that we're talking about today. But there is confusion, isn't there? And it runs deep. And we were looking at I mentioned the stats earlier on. Wipro's just put out their Intelligent Enterprise report for 2020. And I mean, we see a lot of this in the press headlines where AI is misrepresented. And so look at this quote, 95%, well, listen to this quote, 95% of business leaders surveyed in this report see AI as critical to intelligent enterprises. Okay, fine. Only 17% of respondents are using AI across the entire organization. Flip that around, and your headline could be 17% of organizations have rolled out AI across their entire organization. Like, the headline doesn't even make any sense, does it?
Yeah, no, that's part of the problem.
Oh, God, we're going to do AI, right?
And that's part of the problem of just taking a survey and splashing it out that says, hey, the people that took this, it's basically said the people that took this survey didn't understand the question. It's basically what it says. So I don't think that's true at all, Prashant.
No, I don't think that's true at all. Excitement is one thing, and then the ability to do something with that excitement is another thing. When the two are so far apart, frankly, I think we are in for a world of disappointment. And I think it's our job as leaders in this space, as communicators, as authors, is to be able to change that. Where very quickly 91% of the executives believe that they are using, I'm not saying across the whole enterprise, but they are using AI to achieve valuable business needs. 60% of them have done it across the enterprise, small or large efforts. And the rest are rushing to get there. To a point John made earlier in other conversation that I had, I was talking to someone the other day, and they were asking me about the impact of COVID. And I said, yeah, look, I mean, if you don't talk about COVID, then you're not a cool kid anymore. So I'm taking it upon myself to prove my coolness by introducing COVID into this conversation. But it's a very interesting time that we live in. It's a multi-generational event akin to the Great Depression, to World War II, frankly. And the impact that it's going to have both on the personal and the professional spheres we're already seeing those changes, but it's going to be longer lasting. I see my 80-year-old daughter, and if you kind of look at her, she's doing an online class right now. That was unimaginable 6 weeks ago, even. That's what's happening. Why does it matter to the enterprise? You can look at COVID as a pain in the neck, which it certainly is. Or you can look at it as a fantastic opportunity for reconfiguring things, re-looking at things, and using it to go past. Use COVID as an excuse or as a reason to change things. Don't just look at it as a tragedy, which it is, but look at it also as an opportunity and use analytics and AI to drive that.
Yeah, the COVID is definitely a tragedy. There's no doubt about it. My heart goes out to all the people affected by it and those that have lost family members and loved ones. It is definitely a tragedy on a global scale. There's no doubt about that. But it is an opportunity. You're absolutely right, Prashant. And organizations that are not taking this opportunity to re-engineer, re-architect, rebuild, and leverage, the technologies that are coming out of it and the technologies that are being proven. We were on a call yesterday with a number of people, some executives included, that said, well, we just really thought the organization would come to a screeching halt if everybody wasn't trooping into the offices. We all know we work in analytics and work in, media and work across, remote work environments quite frequently. I've done it for 25 years. So I'm always surprised when I hear people say that, we've hired people that we can't trust to work from home. I think that's a hiring problem. That's not a COVID problem. But yeah, this is an opportunity to retool, re-engineer, and re-engage with different audiences. As you said, Prashant, it's a multi-generational workforce at this point. We have 4 different generations in the workforce at one time now. And each of us need to be mentoring and reverse mentoring each other so we can understand that, hey, there's a lot of people older than us that you really don't understand this whole remote Zoom thing. And there's a lot of people younger than us that only want to work on Zoom. So, we all got to come together at some point.
Prashant, I echo what John said about the tragedy, and we lost an extended family member to COVID. So I'm certainly one of the people that feel the pain on this. But when we look back on this with the technology lens that we are doing in this conversation, could we see COVID-19 as a technology revolution?
It already is. It already is. To John's point, I think there are companies that never thought that their business could be run with 100% of their workforce from home. We are already seeing, for example, real estate across the world, where organizations and corporations are reducing their real estate footprint by 35% or more in terms of office space for 2021 and beyond. That would have been unimaginable. Now, so we're already seeing that. If you take a look at an example of where web conference tools are and video conferencing tools are, I mean, who would have imagined 6 months ago that my 8-year-old and my 3-year-old would know what Zoom and Teams meant? I mean, they were interested in other things. So this is not just the professional workforce. Our children and our elders are learning about technologies, frankly, that we never thought would have been of the slightest interest. At the same time, I think that we are coming closer together as a society, because we are all in this same boat, irrespective of the differences that we have as individuals, as people, as societies. We are all impacted by the singular event, and all of us are trying to survive. We are trying to manage lost jobs. We are trying to manage the impact on health, the fear that exists in our societies. But then, despite all of that, can we still thrive? And can organizations go beyond survival as a base metric to thriving? And I think that is going to be the differentiating factor of what decides 5 years from now which organizations exist, which don't, and which ones are absolutely at the top of the game.
Agreed. I decided to embark on this career of data and analytics 35 years ago, thinking, it'll work out for the next few years. It's going to be interesting. And it's funny. I ran into one of my old bosses from IBM at O'Hare about a year ago, and he turned to me and he goes, "Hey, how you doing?" After we talked about daughters and dogs and all the things you catch up on, he said, "When you were banging on about data and analytics like 15 years ago, I thought you were just insane." And I said, "No, I was just early. That's all." So, I think that we're just in the tip of the curve where we're starting to see the acceleration. I was having a conversation yesterday with a gentleman that's creating an online or a totally online, on-demand auto insurance platform. So when you go in your car, you turn on your car, your insurance starts. When you turn on your car, when you turn your car off, your insurance stops. So you're insured for all the different coverages, and if you want comprehensive and all the kind of stuff when your car is sitting in your garage, you can buy that. But if you only want it when you're driving and liability when you're moving or your engine is on, you can have that too. So who would have thought of that? This is a whole new world. Everything is changing, and it's all data and real time enabled.
Yeah, and that's a great point, John, to where data and analytics is going to make a difference, because all of us have been through the auto driving experience, especially people like Richard who drive Ferraris who have to pay more on auto insurance. Where the first questions we are asked are, how many times do you drive? Where do you drive to? How many kilometers or miles is it? Where do you park? Well, I'll tell you, last 6 months I have driven hardly any. I'm parked at home. I'm still paying the installments on my car for two cars that I don't use. And to your point, that service you talked about, all of a sudden, it's extremely relevant to me, not just because of the financial implications, and it's going to save me money as a consumer. It is also important because it's a business that is looking at the customer and what the customer wants, and is changing the business process to meet both the customer's need and society needs. Why should somebody who doesn't have a job today have to pay for stuff that frankly they shouldn't be paying? And I think that's a great example, frankly, of how we should be looking at these opportunities.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and this company that I'm referencing, they've been in business for a couple years now, and they've started actually having their service operate that if you're one of their insureds and the telematics is coming off the car, and the car was going 60 miles an hour a second ago and now it's going 0, that's a pretty clear indication that something not good has happened. They will check on you, they will check on the car, and then they will call the police and the first responders before they call you. Now, that's an insurance company I'm interested in doing business with.
The way you guys are talking, it's like paradigm shifts, and I can hear you like listing them as you go through these examples. The paradigm shift in auto insurance powered by AI and other technologies. We were talking about the sharing economy there. We were touching on the experience economy. There's other things, of course, like augmented reality. I mean, what's that going to do to Twitter? Like when you have your Apple AR glasses on and things become spatial and immersive, is anybody going to want to just be typing into a text-based sharing platform anymore? So these can knock you out. COVID, another paradigm shift, can knock you out, can't it? It can just literally, where you think your runway's there, it's here suddenly.
Yeah.
And I guess if we start to kind of summarize and wrap up this conversation, it's the agility, isn't it? It's the mindset around agile in a company.
I thought we had 4 or 5 hours we were going to do this. What do you mean wrap it up? We're just getting warmed up here.
You guys are still going. I'm still going. You're the one with the work.
Yeah, no, we are. Yeah, we are in paradigm shifts. There's no doubt about it. The augmented reality, AI enabled systems. I always talk about it that the whole Terminator thing. I find that not even really interesting anymore. We will have AI everywhere, and it will be like the light switches. When you walk into the room, you switch on the light switch. You don't think of Nikola Tesla and Westinghouse and Edison. That's just not even part of your reality anymore. You just expect the light to go on. We will have AI enabled systems, and we will just expect them to operate. So AI enabled auto insurance, AI enabled commerce, healthcare, coronaviruses. There's the discovery of all this. I'm working with another company where they have built an environment that does not require business users or technical users to formulate a hypothesis. It automatically combs through the data and looks for every possible combination of every possible solution and comes back and tells you in a true discovery fashion, here are your solutions.
Prashant, what does the CEO do though? I mean, what John's describing sounds sensible, So why are so few organizations really grasping this and acting on this?
I think I think the first thing is to participate with an open mind. Ignore the hype on one hand, even though it's difficult to do it when you've got 1,000 vendors who are promising the next AI generation toaster that's going to toast your bread for you, it's going to eat it for you, and it's going to digest it for you. So in such a world of hype, it's very difficult to separate fact from fiction. So I think the first thing, as you're doing over here, is to have more conversations like this and participate in these conversations, to work and communicate and share with people who have been there, done that before, and who are not here to sell you a product or a service, but who are here to share. And I think that's something the three of us share. I believe this is going to be a series. It's not going to be a one-off. So I think we can touch upon more topics. But the first thing is have an open mind and participate, right? The impact of data analytics and AI, as John mentioned, is we are just starting. It's a multi-generational impact. Not just multi-generation from all the generations that exist today, but also influencing where a company goes 30 years from now, and whether it's thriving, surviving, or non-existent 50 years from now. And so I think we have already started that with this conversation here. And then on a very self-serving note, buy John's book, buy my book, listen to Richard's podcast.
You saved me a job, Prashant.
Oh, funny.
I can't agree more. So I'm going to be sharing some of this content around. I'll be taking some clips out of this wonderful session that we've had today, and also promoting these guys because I think it's really important that we connect. So have a look through the comments. I put John's book there. Prashant, have you got a link to your book to hand? I had it just here a second ago, so I can put it up as well.
I'll put it up with respect to the last one.
Here we go. I've got this right here. Got one of those super long Amazon codes as well that's we'll put in for speed, and then people can access that too. So I'm so excited to see the journey that you keep creating. I'll add that as a better link in just a moment, Prashant. John's writing a book a year. His wife's committed him to a book a year. Isn't that incredible? And if you don't follow John on LinkedIn, make sure you do. He is so open. He's honest. He speaks from the heart. He's, doesn't ever claim to have a monopoly on the truth, but he's pretty smart. He's well worth listening to. So make sure you follow John and Prashant as well. So excited about your book. I hope we can keep talking about that in the build up to it and tease us some more about the great content you've got coming out. I hope you'll join me again, guys. We can definitely do more of these sessions. It would be a privilege and honor to spend more time with you. Thanks for everybody who's joined us today in your comments. I can see that you've been enjoying the show. We'll all catch up soon. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
Richard.